Good morning. Thanks for taking some time to come hang out with me again here in my kitchen. Um, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what happened to my family when my son went into quarantine and when we all went into quarantine as a consequence of this COVID-19 business. Happened on the Wednesday of Holy Week. Um, yeah, Wednesday of Holy Week. It made Holy Week a bit a bit sketchy for us, but not as sketchy as it was for the member of my family who ended up in quarantine because of this virus. It's one of my sons who is an endurance athlete. He runs 40 to 50 miles a week at a pretty good pace and all those sorts of things. He runs on a cross country team. He's a varsity cross country runner. He's one of the captains of his cross country team. He ran his state last year with his cross country team. So, listen, the guy's got his health figured out. He's in really good shape and he's got his nutrition dialed. And so the Monday of Holy Week, when he went out for like a 9 mile run and he came back, he's like, Dad, I'm just gassed. I didn't have any energy. I thought, that happens. I said, no problem, man, no problem. Just shake it off. The next day he went out for a 5K run, which for him is it's a light snack. It's nothing. And he came back and he was just wiped out. He was just sitting there with his head down. He's like, Dad, I don't know what's wrong. And this is a high energy kid, so there was something really wrong. That would have been the Tuesday of Holy Week. By the Wednesday of Holy Week, he's in lockdown. We're in conversations every day with doctors. I'm not going to give any of the specifics of that, but just suffice to say, he's now going to be in quarantine. The entire family is quarantined. And he meets with doctors every single day. And the thing about his illness, one of the things he has said to me, he goes, Dad, this is not the sickest I've ever been, but it's the most tired I've ever been for the longest period of time. And that's why I guess I would share with you about his experience with COVID. It wasn't like he was being violently ill, but like if family members would FaceTime him, he would just lay the phone down and he would just kind of stare into it. That's not like him. He just had no energy. And he eventually got out of quarantine. He had to go, I believe, 72 hours without a fever. But when he was done with the quarantine, it didn't change the fact that he still didn't have any energy. His physical energy level remained low for a long time. It's been 6 weeks. He's still recovering from it. I mean, he's back out running again, and it's okay, but he still kind of gets gassed easier than he ever did before. The week after he was released from quarantine, he could barely walk upstairs. If we would go outside and just be hanging out and he'd walk around the house, he'd have to come inside and rest, right? We're talking like after now we're into 10 to 14 days of him having this illness and he still can't really even walk upstairs without getting lightheaded. A guy who runs 50 miles a week and he can barely get his breath back after something like walking around the house. And that's the experience that I think informs me when people ask about how we're going to open the churches again. Listen, I'm not scared of this illness. I know that it's terrifying and I know that it can be really problematic, but it's not like it was some horrific experience of watching my son writhe in agony. That's not what happened. What happened was he just couldn't get his energy back. And for a guy in as good a shape as he is and was, for a guy whose nutrition was figured out, he was doing everything right, it's been a 6-week recovery. And it leads me to wonder what that recovery would look like for people who aren't in as good a shape as a 15-year-old endurance runner who's got his nutrition totally dialed and who's at the height of physical fitness. When people say, when are we going to open up our churches? I ask myself, well, what condition are you in? How would you compare yourself to a 15-year-old who took 6 weeks to recover from this? Most of the people who ask me about opening the church are not 15 years old. They're not endurance runners, and they don't always have their nutrition dialed in, and it makes me wonder what their recovery would look like. See, and that's the thing. All of this just makes me wonder. And as pastor, I don't know that I'm super comfortable with just opening up the church so that people can expose themselves to that kind of recovery. I'm all for our economy getting back to normal. And I want people who are in danger of losing their jobs to have job security. I want all of that. I'm not one of these people who thinks we should just shut everything down and would just kind of go with the consequences. That's not how I feel. But when the question comes to when do we open the churches, when we have quite a large population of people who would be vulnerable to this illness, they're not just vulnerable to the illness. What they're vulnerable to is the recovery. And it leads me to believe that maybe the churches aren't the first places that need to be opening. Maybe it's okay for us to be a little cautious before we put people in the position where they have to experience a recovery that might be a little bit more challenging for them than it is for, say, a 15-year-old, because it was hard enough for him. I don't have all the answers, and ultimately, I'm going to go with whatever decision the councils at my churches go with, right? We're gonna open things as soon as we can, but my perspective is this: it's okay for us to be cautious. It's okay for us not to put people in harm's way too quickly and too soon. It's okay for us to not put people in a position where they have to recover for 6 weeks simply because the church opened and they felt obligated to go to church. I think it's okay for us right now to be safe about that. And you might not like that perspective, and you might not even agree with it. You might be watching this going, yeah, but I watched a video that said this, 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 and he probably didn't, blah, blah, blah. And I understand all of this. And I just want to tell you that that's not going to change the experience I've had. The experience I've had with COVID is that it's serious. It's not the end of the world, but it's serious. And I think it's okay for the church to take it seriously. I think it's okay for us to wait a while. I wonder what you think. And I hope you know that at both the churches that I'm serving, the leadership is listening to what you think. I don't get to have the last word on the subject, but I thought I'd at least share my experiences with you because maybe it'll help inform you as you make your decisions about how you enter back into the culture. But most importantly, I tell you about these things to let you know that I take as seriously as you do the question, when are we going to open the church? It's hard to answer the question of when are we going to open the churches, because I would say we're going to open the church when I can guarantee that you're not going to have to go through what my son went through. I would want to say we'll open the church when I know for a fact that you're not going to get an illness at the church that's going to take you at least 6 weeks to recover from. I don't have all the answers. But I tell you what, this is what I do have. I have faith that our congregations will make the right choice. And I think if we go into these decisions with the primary goal of loving each other, then we're probably not going to be able to make a bad decision. Listen, I hope you're well. I hope that this story of my family's experience with COVID has been helpful. If it hasn't, I hope that you were at least entertained for about 8 minutes. Either way, I'm glad you took the time to come be with me, and I can't wait to see you again. Peace.